Sebastian, welcome to the podcast. How are you, buddy?
Thank you very much. I am doing great. Exhausted with 3 kids, but it's good times.
Oh, wow. What ages are your children?
4, 4, and 6. So 3 boys, twins, the whole shebang.
Can I hear a screaming child in the background slightly?
You can't. No, 3, yes.
Man, I've got a 5-year-old boy, and he's hard enough work. So 3.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, fair play to you. Fair play.
Now I understand why you've been a bit of a challenge to pin down for a time, mate.
Yeah, and my wife saves every dog she can get her hands on. So we have 10 dogs living inside as well.
No way. You have 10 dogs?
Yes, ways.
How big's your house? Must be your mansion.
Well, I have to sit on the floor because the sofa is taken.
Wow. But you're a yoga guy though, right? So that's your second home. That's where you feel natural, I guess.
In dog hair, you mean?
Maybe not so much dog hair, but on the floor.
All right, fair play. Yes.
I see you've got some roll-up mats behind you there as well, mate. So making good use of the space.
You're absolutely correct. I'm actually going to roll that out so that I can do the podcast and walk the talk, so to say.
There we go.
There we go.
Lovely.
All right. You sure you're comfortable?
I am comfortable, always, on the floor.
All right. My man. So we've been wanting to catch up with you for a while. Obviously, you're the founder and face head coach, head yoga instructor, whatever you want to call it, of yoga for BJJ. So I'd imagine a very well-known person within the jiu-jitsu space. I've previously subscribed to your online program. My partner isn't even a jiu-jitsu practitioner, watches your YouTube videos and uses some of your routines. So very well known for your yoga. What I wanted to kick off with first, and I know you've talked about this story before, but assuming that we, our audience, don't know your story, what came first for you? Was it yoga or was it BJJ?
First came ADD, I would say. We didn't have that classification back then, but my mom had to put me in some activity to get the steam out. Martial arts was perfect. I did it for 16 years, competed a lot, maybe 120 tournaments through my childhood. And then the day I tried BJJ, I'm like, whoa, I've been married to the wrong person for a long time. And I just switched because I had been doing jiu-jitsu without knowing that it was an actual sport. So as soon as I married jiu-jitsu instead, there was no going back. And I'm about as excited about it still today as when I was a white belt because I love it so much.
That's really cool, man. And what, did you say it was it judo that you started with, right?
Yeah, I started with judo and then jiu-jitsu. But of course, like I say, if you continue that analogy of our relationship, I found a good way to describe it is that we all love jiu-jitsu, but jiu-jitsu doesn't love us back. It's basically a toxic relationship where you're like, oh, I love you so much. And then you get punched in the face and you motherfucker. And you keep coming back like a sucker until you just are completely broken. And that's basically my calling because I was there when I was 26. I had to lay down on the floor and kind of do a triangle on myself just to put on socks. And that's not sustainable. You can't continue doing jiu-jitsu for 20 years if you do hard rounds all the time. You need to take care of yourself. And that consciousness about an awareness of your body and respect its limits is hard to do when someone is on top of you trying to strangle you. You need to learn that without an opponent. So basically the yoga that I'm doing has nothing to do with crystals or mantras and chakras. It's all about doing jiu-jitsu with yourself to kind of undo the damage and also prepare you for the stuff that's inevitably going to happen. So someone is going to put your spine into a twist. And if you have never done that before, you're going to have a hernia. If you do it every day, laying on the floor, you're going to know your limits and you're going to tap in time because you've been there 100 times before. So yoga for BJJ has basically nothing to do with yoga and everything to do with BJJ. But BJJ is not wholesome. It's horrible. But with yoga, you can both prepare your body and you can actually learn to do jiu-jitsu in a much healthier way. You're not teaching your body like a instrument that you can just imagine if your body was a car. Like imagine your dream car, like a Ferrari for $1 million. if I gave you the keys to that car today, would you pay really good attention to maintenance and change the oil and check everything? Probably, yeah.
Of course.
But you can just buy a new car or change it or downgrade. You can do many things with a car, but your body, you have one, and you treat it like garbage. Like you put garbage into it, you smash it in jiu-jitsu, you're on your phone when you should be sleeping, you're not drinking enough water, like you're basically torturing your body. And the yoga can actually make you self-aware and start making good choices and change. And that's what it did for me. I was basically sleeping on an air mattress and waking up on the concrete floor because the mattress was leaking when I met my wife. And when I started doing yoga, I became more self-aware and like, how am I treating myself? Because I feel like absolute shit that I'm 26. And now I'm 40 and I'm beating the shit out of most 26-year-olds that try to test them on myself. So it really, like, I without losing too much humility, I would say that my career is a proof that the concept works.
Yeah, awesome. And before you found yoga, like what was your natural mobility like? Because in my experience, I've come across people that just seem to have a gift for movement and they can put their bodies and contort their bodies in some incredible ways. Whereas I'm an example. I've got to work incredibly hard to maintain a degree of mobility just to get into some basic jiu-jitsu position. So what was your natural lean like in regard to mobility?
If I were to give a percentage, I would say I probably got like 15 to 25% more flexible after starting yoga. But it's like a dental health. Like you can't brush your teeth really well when you're young and then you have it for life. You have to do it constantly. So and if you lift weights and do jiu-jitsu, do that for 3 days without doing yoga and you're back at square one. But it's pretty easy when the body has gotten over the threshold and it starts getting used to it, you kind of have a hunch of what you need. I need to do a strong yoga workout today because I've been driving the car for too long. I really need some core work. If you've been doing jiu-jitsu and playing half guard on one side, what I need is side stretches and twists. This is kind of like an intuition that you build up over time. So like the amount of flexibility isn't as important as people think. Like nobody, like I talk, do you know Espen Mathisen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've got him on. He's coming on in a couple of weeks, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Well, let me praise the guy to the heavens because my guard has been shit for so many years, and 2.5 hours on his seminar, and I got maybe a 85% upgrade in my guard just because he showed me where I'm supposed to be. And I thought he was really strong and really flexible. That's why he was so good. But it's pure goddamn technique. And what he showed me is that if you ever have to put your foot where the toes is close to the nose like this, that's not really good. It's like a desperate last resort. Your foot should really be in an offensive position just in the mid-range. If you have to reach out with your foot, you get weak. If you get your foot all the way close behind your head, you're weak. So like the amount of flexibility necessary isn't that much when you're doing the technique well. As he's really flexible, and his friend Tommy, they've been training together forever. They're super flexible, but they almost never use it because they have good technique. So I think the mobility and yoga is much more about preventing injuries by putting yourself in strong positions rather than having extreme flexibility, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. And I think you touched on just then, or a little bit earlier, but I've heard previously that you obviously had some pretty bad injuries as a result of beating up your body for, up until the age of 26, which yoga obviously then helped with, right? Was it your back that you had some real problems with?
Yeah, about 6 years. I was training hard every day because that's a culture. Like if you're not in pain, you're probably not training enough.
Yeah.
And that was that was a toxic relationship. That was my attitude towards training was basically my old horrible marriage. That was inevitable that it was going to end. And luckily, I found a new beautiful girlfriend in jiu-jitsu, and as well as my wife. She actually showed me the way and opened the path to Jesus Christ, and showed me that it's possible to train even something crazy as jiu-jitsu which is basically the only sport where you're playing the sport from your back on the ground, and someone is trying to like twist you into a pretzel, and you can actually do that without being effed.
So did you said how much you was training? Did you then like cut back on your jiu-jitsu training to then add in flexibility, or did you just add the flexibility on top?
The hernias was bad. Like I couldn't work. Because I was leaning over working in a kitchen, and my back was horrible. And I realized now that I started changing my posture to a better posture, that I was doing everything right, and that's why I was hurting so much. So all these tips of shoulders back, lift your chest, tuck your tailbone, this is actually horrible advice for someone with back pain. And when you kind of go the other way, and you both develop the strength, flexibility, and awareness, and change the patterns, it took about a year, and I had to take a lot of time off jiu-jitsu to undo that. But then I came back, and even after a year's break, I was performing much, much better, because I thought that I don't like this technique. It's not for me. Why? I don't know. I don't like it. But then after I fixed my body, I'm like, it's easy now because I can move. My biggest opponent is not the guy trying to choke me. It's my body not doing what I want it to do. So when I can get up and like, look at this, I'm sitting on the floor now with crossed legs. I can stand up, spin around, and sit down again. No pain in the toes, no pain in the ankles, no pain in the hips, no restrictions. That's not crazy. It's actually a predictor of how long you're going to live. If you can't do that, it means a number of things, and these things are associated with dying in the next 5 years. So it's actually a measure, a scientific measure, how good of your general health is. Of course, it doesn't work as a measure if you start practicing this all the time. It's not that you're going to live longer, but the other things that you're doing in life, if you're sitting all the time and you're really overweight, you're not going to be able to do this. And those things means that you're going to live shorter. So like mobility, the way that you live your body is reflected in your mobility. So that's why mobility can be used as a test for literal longevity, but definitely jiu-jitsu longevity.
Yeah. And you obviously reference mortality rates with mobility there. And I've certainly heard that obviously inactivities, are the biggest threat to life and the biggest kind of risk factor for all-cause mortality. So I agree with that. And I've also heard that leg strength is obviously a big factor as well.
Yes,
when you think about mobility, what do you define that as? Is it like flexibility? Is it strength through movement? What do you define it as?
People can be hypermobile. That doesn't mean that you're healthy. But getting up and down from the floor is probably at the top of the list.
Yeah.
When you watch an old person, let's picture an 80-year-old person that's walking with a cane super slowly. The steps are like 1 inch long. He's not walking like that because he's old. He's walking like that because he doesn't have an option, because taking longer steps hurt. And they didn't start when he was 79. It started when he was 35. And he stopped jumping, he stopped sprinting, he stopped squatting, he stopped hanging, he stopped doing pull-ups, he stopped doing push-ups. You have a list of 500 things, and every year you maybe stop 1 to 10 of those. I heard a statistic that after 36 or something, 99% of people will never sprint again.
Yeah, I've seen that, yeah.
It's crazy. And sprinting and impact, like lifting heavy weights and impact training, like impact when you jump, that doesn't really affect your muscles much, but it affects your bone density and your ligaments. So if you want stronger bones and ligaments, you should jump a lot down from things and land really hard so that it hurts a little bit. So those things really matter. But mobility, if you know a guy called Kelly who wrote the book Becoming a Supple Leopard, if you listen to his podcast on Rich Roll, it's worth every second. It's like a 3.5-hour podcast, and it's worth every second. And he describes that mobility scientifically is the only thing that you will not lose with age. You can put your legs behind your head when you're 100 if you start when you're 30, and you can get up and down from the floor when you're 100. After 70, your cardio starts declining. If you run, like I met a guy, he was 86, and he was still running 20 kilometers every day when he was 86. But he had been doing that for forever. But the mobility is one of the things that should never be compromised if you have gotten over a certain threshold.
Yeah. So if you were like not, the most mobile person, how long does it normally take? Can you become more mobile at, I don't know, 60 years old if you're on the mats? If you work at it enough, or is there like a point where it's past no return?
If you walk with really bad posture in flat shoes on hard surfaces for 60 years, you are very likely to need a hip surgery. And if you need a hip surgery, you probably can't do most yoga classes or mobility classes. So by that point, it's too late. If you get a hip surgery and it's a good hip surgery, you can probably start doing a lot. And like I have the hardest and the easiest job in the world. The hardest part of my job is convincing people to start. Just do 1 minute. That's the hardest part. The hook is what I like, what my business is lacking, because getting people to actually start is hard. Then my job, as soon as you started, it's the easiest job in the world because you have a human body. And the human body is the most adaptive motherfucking thing in the world. So as soon as you start something, be it lifting weights, running, eating healthy, doing mobility, the body adapts super quickly. And it actually adapts so quickly that you have to change up your routines every now and then in order to not over-adapt and just plateau. So anybody can develop their mobility. And actually if you're 300 pounds, losing 10 pounds is very easy. If you're 50 pounds, it's very hard. And if you're super flexible and you want to be a gymnast, increasing that flexibility you're already gonna be at the point of diminishing returns. But if you're super ultra stiff, if you're stiff as a rock, the first 30% is gonna be super quick. It's gonna be really quick. Like my best example is Michael Zenga. Do you know this guy?
No.
He's the co-founder of BJJ Fanatics.
Okay.
John Danaher used to call him Mr. Frozen Concrete because he was so damn stiff. He couldn't sit down like this on his knee and get his butt to his heels.
Oh wow. Okay.
I did a class with him and Bernardo in Boston when I was there recording for BJJ Fanatics, and it was a horrible experience, that class, because they were in so much pain just from their body. And I'm like, okay, please commit to 2 months, 10 minutes a day. He did it, and then he started sending me selfies of himself, like literally sitting with the knees like this and putting his palms behind him on the floor, like at a 45-degree angle. So I don't know how you would measure that with percentages, but like instead of being leaning forward 45 degrees, he was leaning backwards. And like he was like, in your face, Danaher, I'm not Mr. Frozen Concrete anymore. And this was like in 2 months. Like having him put his legs behind the head would probably be like a 30-year endeavor. But he doesn't need that. He just needs to be able to function normally. And that's one of the easiest things you can ever do. But you need to be consistent. It's not like you can take a course for 2 weeks and then it's over and then you're flexible. Like you have to actually change the habits, like eating habits. You can go on a diet, but as soon as you finish the diet, you bounce back and you're fat again. You need to actually do a change. And that's getting people to actually start that journey is very difficult.
Yeah, no, you're spot on with identifying that key problem with yoga and getting people to start, because it's something that I've started and stopped a couple of times, and we've had a number of conversations with people on this podcast around how best to supplement your jiu-jitsu and people's adherence to different interventions. And typically, people just want to train jiu-jitsu all the time. I think there's like a common belief and a degree of enjoyment that people will do maybe weight training and resistance training. And it always feels like maybe sort of mobility or yoga is just like a little bit further down the list. So when you look at your week and your time, it's like jiu-jitsu, weights, and then maybe a bit of yoga. And it feels like people always see it, or in most cases that we've experienced, people often see it as like a third or fourth thing down the list to do.
Yeah. I think you could bunch yoga together with sleep and recovery. People want to see a movie, have sex, go party, all these active activities, and then they sleep for 2 hours that night, and then they're absolutely smashed the next day. You always put recovery last, and when you do, you have to pay the consequences, and that's the problem that we all have. We're too addicted to the action, too much yang, too little yin, and yoga is much more feminine than the masculine jiu-jitsu. In jiu-jitsu, we choke each other, and we're so active, and we expend all our energy in 90 minutes. And then our definition of recovery is Netflix and trash food and just, being passive. It's not recovery, it's just passivity. And that's why we're paying the price.
Yeah, I think most hobbyists as well, if you just the average guy is coming in doing 2 jiu-jitsu sessions a week, the last thing probably on his mind is actually getting some yoga in. He's just like, he's not even thinking about it, is he? And that must be your biggest hurdle at times, getting those, people that are doing 2 or 3 times a week and then actually thinking, I actually need to do some flexibility and mobility work to improve my guard, or it improves so much of jiu-jitsu, doesn't it? Flexibility. Not even just not being super flexible, but just general flexibility. I remember when I started jiu-jitsu a few years ago, I couldn't cross my legs and sit down. You know what I mean? And now I do quite a lot of like mobility work now, and like I've got an all right guard. Like I'm not that unflexible. You know what I mean? Like, but it took time. But I remember first starting jiu-jitsu, I was that guy. I couldn't get my bum to my ankles. I couldn't do any of that. But now within 2 years, just from doing it, I actually can do it all.
Yeah, but you're describing a completely different discussion, which is that mobility is not an attribute. It's a skill. Because your muscle is not per definition stiff. You can have fascia that is connected to other fascia, meaning the connective tissue in one part of your muscle has grown together with another part. Let's say you've been in the bed for 6 months because you broke every bone in your body. When you get out of bed, you won't have that sliding factor of the muscle fibers against other muscle fibers. You will be literally stiff, like it's grown shut. And the only way to break that is by moving. So you have a little bit of real stiffness, but your muscles are mostly not stiff. It's your nervous system and habits and patterns. So if you've never done a squat, when you go outside your comfort zone, your normal range of motion, your nervous system is going to go red alert and say, stop, this is dangerous. And that's why you can't do that when you start. And with just a little bit of training and like bit by bit training your nervous system that, this is actually okay, it doesn't hurt, then it's just a skill. If you want to go all the way into a full splits, then it's a lot of physical stuff too. And not everybody is meant to be able to go into a full split more than you think. I've seen people start at age 66 and they can put the nose to their toes. So they literally have like 50 centimeters of improvement within a year. So extreme cases are possible, but I don't think it's I think a 10% increase in flexibility, if we could measure exact percentages, is more than enough for almost everybody in jiu-jitsu. Because just being able to know that, okay, when the arm goes here, it's fine. If it goes there, the kimura is going to pop my shoulder, so I'm going to tap. Just that awareness, I think, is going to stop most injuries.
Yeah, it's true. It's funny when you mentioned obviously hip replacements and stuff earlier. I've watched a couple of surgeries, sort of knee replacement, hip replacement. And one of the things that I was fascinated at the most is when they're unconscious, they bend their legs in all sorts of directions.
Yeah,
and because the CNS obviously isn't playing a role at that point because they're unconscious, so it just obviously echoes what you were saying there, that actually it's like a tolerance thing opposed to a stretching thing. So the length is there. It's just kind of getting past that central nervous system that doesn't like stretching it or lengthening it.
It's funny that you say that. I was having that example in my head, but I didn't want to go derail it, so I'm happy you brought it up.
Does that have that much of an impact, does it?
Yeah, I think it does, mate. But like Sebastian was saying as well, obviously there's certain people, I guess their bone structures and, their the socket depth in their hip or something. And obviously as you get older, like bone spurs and that type of thing that may have an impact on kind of mobility, the actual joint itself. But I think where muscles are involved, the length is there, but...
So what's wrong with your length?
Just don't lengthen it enough, mate.
Just stiff as you're trying to move, mate.
Yeah. But here's the thing. if we're gonna nerd down that deep, I have to
go on.
explain something. I have to explain something about joints in my amateur view of joints. If a joint is mobile in every direction, it means it's less stable. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shallow socket, isn't it?
Yeah, a shallow socket, like the shoulder is more shallow than the hip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're stiff, nobody's stiff in every direction. Nobody has a hip socket that's so deep that that it can't move. Like there is a lot of variance. Like some people have 45 degrees on the angle of the femur and the head of the femur, and some people have 90 degrees, and that's going to affect if they can do a lotus or not. So if you have no chance of getting into a lotus, it's probably not a worthwhile endeavor to start chasing the lotus. So that's why I'm saying like the full splits or the side splits or the lotus or the head legs behind the head is the yoga that we see in one person out of 10,000 that can do all of that. And we should not put that as an ideal. We should just see, for example, there is a 96-year-old woman, I think she's over 100 now if she's still alive. She was doing the Mayurasana, which is basically where you're balancing on two arms and like the legs are flying. She was doing that over age 90. And they asked, and she started yoga when she was 60. They asked her, what do you do? And she's like, I do my 6 poses. And they're like, which 6 poses? She's like, my 6 poses. And they're like, what do you mean with your? She's like, I have found the 6 poses that I need to do every day before I get out of bed, because if I don't function correctly. So she had pinpointed what her body needed. And there are 2,000 official yoga poses. India even copyrighted them. And nobody needs 2,000 poses. You need a handful, or like less than 10 poses that you need to do every day. Which one those are is impossible to know. You need to try a couple of hundred to figure out, oh, this is absolutely not for me. This is horrible. But this one is nice. But every spine needs to twist it. Every spine needs to side stretch, bend backwards, bend forwards. Everyone needs to move their wrists and joints in circular motions. Everybody needs to, and since we all live kind of the same lives, we all need to stretch the lower back and the hip flexors. And in jiu-jitsu, we have to do things on both sides because we have our favorite guard pass and we become really uneven. So these things are universal. But you can't get around the fact that you need to do 10, 15 minutes of moving on the floor every day. No exceptions. Everybody should sit on the floor for 30 minutes. And if you're still for 30 minutes, it's still much better than just sitting slouched in a sofa like a potato. And Kelly, if you watch that podcast with Kelly on Rich Roll, he talks a lot about, he talks about MMA. And he's like, you know what the best part about MMA is that you're getting up and down from the floor 100 times in the class. So just that is like absolutely great for mobility, just being able to bounce back up when you fall. And because someone said that a nice litmus test, like a nice visual to have is like you should live your whole life preparing for the last 10 years. How do you want your last 10 years to be? Doesn't matter how old you get. The last 10 years, do you want them to be graceful and enjoyable, or do you want to be in misery? And your whole life, how you live your whole life, is going to define that. And sleeping, hydrating, eating healthy, and doing mobility is at the absolute. It's cornerstones. Jiu-jitsu is a nice bonus that we can do for a while. We can't do it when we're 95 years old. Unless we're doing it in a very restricted way. So jiu-jitsu has a best before date, but having a healthy body does not. And I think you can eat the cake and have it too. You can have a really healthy body and train jiu-jitsu, but it's not going to happen by luck. You have to spend 15 minutes a day doing it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And interesting what you said about being selective with your movements, because me, like everybody else, Danny jokes that I'm super stiff, and I am through some ranges, but I'm very flexible through others. My sort of external hip rotation is really good. I can pretty much get my foot to my face, but my internal hip rotation is terrible. It's barely non-existent.
That's how it's supposed to be. Because if they were flexible both ways, you would be hypermobile and you would pop, your joints would pop out of the socket. So that's good.
Okay, good, reassuring. Something else that is very bad though is my hamstring flexibility. And I think part of that is because I spent many years doing office work. So spent many years kind of in triple flexion with shortened hamstrings. So I found that unless I really work on my hamstring mobility, I'm very stiff with that range, which of course for jiu-jitsu, certain guards and obviously going inverted and things like that are pretty much impossible for me at the moment.
I'm going to challenge you there and just put a huge caveat and disclaimer that everything you say might be completely incorrect. Because the way that you described it, I was ABC for years, and that led me to have D, and that's because, you know, this is like a conspiracy theory. One thing is based on another. There is a lot of assumptions there. So know that you might be completely incorrect. That's what I see more and more. I was really confident the first 10 years of my career, and now I get more and more uncertain because there is a lot of conflicting evidence. But for sure, sitting down, being passive, there's nothing wrong with sitting. You can sit correctly for 10 hours a day and not have back problems. But if you sit with your tail tucked under you, sitting on the back of your butt, hunched over on your phone, that's going to be bad. I never sit still. I sit and then I move and then I twist and then I move and then I twist and then I squat and then I try to be still as little as possible. And then when I sleep really well. Even though I've had huge stress and anxiety from like overwhelm of life of small kids and dogs and everything, I sleep really, really well because I did what I had to do during the day of moving, so that when I'm still, I can be completely still. But you should not be passive during the day. Like if you have one of these fitness watches, it's going to tell you, or like the fitness ring, the Aura ring or whatever, it's going to tell you have been passive for 6 hours a day, 15 hours today. And like you have to set a benchmark, like based on science. Like my favorite guy in the world is called Dr. Greger from Nutrition Facts, and he said if you don't do high intensity exercise or movement so that you're sweating every day, that should be considered high risk behavior. And he's not saying that as an opinion, he's saying that as a scientific fact, and he backs it up with thousands of studies. So we need to have high intensity exercise and we need to have a lot of movement, otherwise we're killing ourselves.
Yeah, I think I'm often guilty of living a life, and I'm in the process of changing this, but I think I live how a lot of sort of aspiring healthy people live, right? And I've heard the term exercising couch potato before, if you've heard that. So I'll get up, I'll roll out of bed, I'll potter around, I'll get out my desk and I'll start working. And then at lunchtime, I'll get up, I'll go to the gym and I'll exercise for maybe 45 minutes to an hour, lifting weights. And, doing that, I try and work through full range of movement. So I'm getting some mobility work through that. But then I go back to my desk, I sit at my desk for several more hours, carry on working. I get up, I play with my kids for a bit, and then I'll go to jiu-jitsu, do that for maybe an hour, hour and a half, come home, sit back down, and that's my day. So although I'm not moving a lot during the day, I am making an effort to get up and do some activity and get my heart rate up and move. But I don't know, from what I can tell, it seems like that isn't as advantageous to long-term health as moving throughout the day is. But I fear that so many people these days are so busy, that's just their life.
Let me take this into let me take exactly what you said and turn it into a new angle.
Yes, sir. Please do.
You are making a constant effort in your work to try to get a little bit of movement in against your environment, because your office environment is not tailored or designed for you to move. It's meant for you to sit your ass still and work. So if you were hiring me for a one-on-one session and like, Sebastian, how can I get more movement into my life? I would say, first thing we do is we go get a drill, and then we drill a big hole in the ceiling, and then we put a strong screw there, and we hang a gymnastic ring or a rubber band or something there, so that when you're sitting in front of your PC, you're not typing all the time. You're watching the screen, you're using the mouse, you have one hand free. So we put the ring or the rubber band exactly where it's easy to grab, so that maybe 10, 15, 20% of the day, you're going to have your arm overhead. It's going to completely change. We just made a change to your environment that encourages you to break the pattern of just having your arms down, shoulders like hunched forward and fingers in front of you. So instead of making the effort at fighting against your environment, we just change the environment once and for good, so that you can, take the path of least resistance to movement. Same thing with the coffee table in front of your sofa. Throw it the hell out and put jiu-jitsu mats there instead. And you should look at the mats and you should feel guilty for sitting in the sofa instead of sitting in the floor when you're watching Netflix. Because if you watch Netflix for 90 minutes, and you sit there and do a little bit of hip movement and stretching, you're going to be exhausted after those 90 minutes, and you just got 90 minutes of hip movement in. So just, making this one-time effort into changing our environment could be, lifelong lasting for creating good habits. What do you think about that idea?
Yeah, I think it sounds great. I think if you can incorporate these things into your existing habits and your commitments, then obviously it's going to remove the barriers to it, isn't it? So it's definitely a good idea. So something I'll try for sure. Yeah, I love it. And then just back to jiu-jitsu. So obviously you've worked, I imagine, with thousands, tens of thousands of people. You've been going for a while, right, with the yoga, the BJJ thing. Obviously, your model is a subscription model, and people going and they have access to your session. So I don't know how much one-to-one contact you have with people, or how much of a sort of view of the landscape you have. But are there like typical movement restrictions that you see most commonly that limit people's jiu-jitsu?
Good question. Yeah, I've had about 20,000 people since 2013 come in and out of the platform, and the biggest challenge has for sure been consistency. But the typical thing in jiu-jitsu is that people are hunched up with the knees to their shoulders. Like if you have tight elbows and you have your knee, if you're tucked up into a ball, you're great at jiu-jitsu. Guard retention and also attacking. Like it's very seldom that we need to stretch our body out completely in jiu-jitsu. It's just like 0.5% of the time. So basically just stretching your body and opening your chest and like bending backwards and stretching arms overhead. These things are very common in yoga and very rare in jiu-jitsu. So basically you have two types of movements that's good in mobility and yoga, and that is stuff that mimic the stuff we do in jiu-jitsu and stuff that complements it and are very different. And when you combine them, it can feel actually really great to do a session. It's like healthy food. If I tell you healthy food, you're going to say, ugh. But then you try really good healthy food and you're like, wow, this is better than what I normally eat. And that's how it is with mobility and yoga as well. It actually feels great to do it, and then you want to do more of it. So yeah.
And you mentioned obviously the biggest challenge is sort of consistency, and yeah, I agree with that as well. That's definitely what I found personally. I've got my own sort of reasons for why I've probably been inconsistent that we can talk about if you like, but I'm just curious to get your take on why you think people can or don't seem to want to stick to like a yoga routine, even 15 minutes a day. Why do you think that is?
I think it's the creating habits. I don't know if you read Atomic Habits. Everybody talks about that book, but starting small.
With it, I've not read it.
Yeah, just get 2 minutes of yoga in every day consistently. If you can do 2 minutes consistently, you can probably do 5 and 10. And if you can do 5, you can do 50. It's just a matter of routine. I want to pitch my free product here, which is that we recorded a new course called the Mobility Challenge, 12 weeks. 15 minutes a day, and once a week you do a 35-minute class. And we created a habit tracker that you can put on your fridge so that you're reminded 15 times a day that this is something that I need to do today. And everybody can, if they want, if they decided and they want, they can do 15 minutes a day. And if you miss one day, you're going to see it for the rest of the challenge. You're going to see, I missed a day. So like you really want to complete it. And we made it scientific so that it's easy to measure. So you do 12 tests of your mobility before and after, so that you can see like a percentage increase. Like I got 7 out of 12, okay, and then I got 10 out of 12. That's a X% improvement. So if you guys want to join that, it would be a huge honor for me, like Bernardo would say. And $75, but it's free at launch. We're going to launch it for free. So, nice. So if you want the link, just let me know.
Yeah, man, I'm down for sure. So is that, so you said you are going to be charging, but that's free at launch. Is that for everybody or is that just for us?
The first 3 months is going to be free. So like we do one 12-week launch and everybody that gets in gets it for free. And then you have to buy it for $75 for a one-time fee after that.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I love that. No, count me in, man. I definitely like the gamification of things, and I think there's a lot of value in kind of taking sort of like baseline and then sort of later results so you can see progression. So I think that's great. Talk to me a little bit about the different movements that you go through in that, and how people measure that sort of at home by themselves.
Yeah, I don't have the habit. I didn't print out the habit tracker myself. I'm going to do that. But it's basically stuff like being able to roll backwards into upside down guard, being able to do the crisscross, standing up and sitting down, just sit in a squat with arms overhead, doing a lunge and kicking your leg forward without losing balance. Basic stuff. But surprisingly, for example, being able to touch your hands behind your shoulders and like grab the hands is going to be impossible for many people. And the goal is not necessarily to score 12 out of 12, but if you have a partner that can take photos of you when you start and then photos after, so you have a before and after photo, that kind of like the most important person that you want to hold accountable to yourself is yourself. So just being able to make a decision yourself and measure yourself and see yourself from the outside and see your consistency. You can call it gamification, but also just making a commit, like finding different ways to commit to something for long enough for it to work. Because I could give you the words of the Lord Jesus Christ himself. It's not necessarily that you would believe it or actually do something about it. So the hardest part about making good choices is making a decision and sticking to it. And it doesn't matter if it's mobility or anything else. It's true for everything.
Yeah, no, it is. You're right. And where can people find the challenge? Is it on your platform or is it on your YouTube channel?
Subscribers to my website, yogaforbjj.net, get it as part of the subscription. But I have a free community where we post stuff like the seminar with Espen is something I posted there. And I will post this challenge and the videos in that community, and it's just network.yogaforbjj.net. You can just sign up for free and start it there.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out, and I'll commit now on the podcast that I'll do it for the 12 weeks.
You're gonna do it,
yeah, for sure, man.
Nice.
Yeah, like I said before, I genuinely have been a customer of yours before. I've had a paid subscription previously, and I don't know. I think I created too many barriers. I think I was trying to just do it at random times in random places when I probably should have, like we just talked about, just done it around an existing routine. We do have a coffee table in the living room that's right in the way, so I am going to probably have a conversation to move that and get some mats down. So again, it just removes the barrier just to hop down and do it. But yeah, I mean, 15 minutes a day, 35 minutes once a week. It's like anything else, and it's dedication. Yeah. If you want to get more flexible, you got to do it. And it's like, if you want to improve mobility and you want to get better on the mats, it needs to be done.
The problem is that it's a bit indirect. I want to get good at jiu-jitsu, so I should do jiu-jitsu all the time. But that's not how it works.
No, it's not. You're exactly right.
Doing jiu-jitsu once or twice a day is overdoing it. So doing this so that I can do that is like I should save money so that I can use money later is not something that comes automatically. So it's one of these level two type thinking that is much harder, especially when we're all screen addicted, and it's so much easier to be entertained instead of doing the things that are good in 3 years or 3 days compared to right now. And we're all guilty of it. I'm not saying I figured that out.
Yeah, but I think it's I like that it's obviously a number of different movements that you're almost testing people on, where if you're nailing it straight away, then you're probably okay, and you can select the ones that you want. Because I think yoga, like with many things in life, it's such like a broad topic, and there's so many different types and so many different movements that you can do, so many joints to try and mobilize. Pardon the pun, but it's almost like paralysis through analysis, isn't it? It's like, what do I start with? But I think if you can narrow that down to a select number of movements that are really going to benefit what it is that you're doing, I think that's going to encourage people to start and stick to it, hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so. I make the analogy of martial arts. Like, I really like the idea of martial arts. Which martial art should I pick? Like, you can choose between karate, taekwondo, and a million different things. But the best one is obviously
Jiu-jitsu, of course.
Of course, yes. And I would say yoga is exactly the same way. You have a million different styles to choose from, but the best one is obviously the one that I'm teaching because it's the one that works for jiu-jitsu. I just took away all the things that are either dangerous or irrelevant. Like if you go to a normal yoga class, you're not really gonna feel like you're doing jiu-jitsu or that it has direct. It's like going to like a general massage where they're just touching a little bit here and there. It doesn't give you that deep effect. Like if you're a grappler and you go to a massagist, like a massage therapist that is a grappler themselves, they're gonna give you a good massage. So that's basically why my yoga is better than every other yoga. And I should say my wife, because she's designing the classes and she's a blue belt and she's been doing jiu-jitsu forever, so she knows how it feels. She's a yoga girl, but she's doing jiu-jitsu, so the yoga is like biased in a good way for how we need it. And I keep getting good feedback from people that have been members for years, and they just keep paying a subscription, even though they know all the classes by heart. They know every word I'm gonna say, but it's so good for them that they keep paying, even if maybe don't even watch the videos anymore. They just do it. So I'm really proud of people that get the consistency, and that I created something that's evergreen. Like you can do my videos 50 years from now and they're still gonna feel good.
Yeah, no, it's wicked. And I think the fact that you're obviously, at this point, a very experienced black belt, obviously will reassure a lot of people that your style of yoga is going to be effective and, sort of relevant to jiu-jitsu, which is cool. I wanted to ask if you sort of encourage or do any other sort of different modalities as well. So you mentioned earlier about sort of fascia and the stickiness of that. I mean, you've obviously got things like foam rolling, a myofascial release, like things like hot yoga seem to be quite popular. Do you sort of do much of that yourself or kind of buy into it at all?
Let's take hot yoga. I went to England, and it's I don't know if you will notice, but it's kind of a rainy country. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, we might have noticed. Yeah,
I was there, and it was a cold and dark evening, and we went to a hot yoga class, and it felt amazing. So it was a great experience. It was just called hot stretching, and it felt absolutely amazing because it's sauna, which is great, and there was yoga, which is great, and together they were absolutely great. So nothing against hot yoga, but it's just the implementation. It's like most yoga classes that I've been to was absolute garbage, because they either didn't make an effort or they were too ignorant to actually make a good class. And the same is true with hot yoga. Like they read from a script. Their teacher told them, you have to teach this because it's the only way. It's just like traditional martial arts. Like some of them are good, but most are shit. Foam rolling, I'm gonna quote Kelly there. He's like, it has some benefits, but it's not really like if you find one place of your body where you can give yourself a self massage and kind of release it a little bit, good. But it's very, very limited to how beneficial it is for like an all round thing. I don't know, what was the other question? Other modalities, obviously, like lifting weights. Lifting heavy weights is it's very hard to build healthy bones and bone structure if you don't lift heavy weights. Obviously, with supervision or being really good with it, because it's really dangerous to spar with heavier opponents and lift heavy weights. So it's important, but it's also really risky. So you have to do it right. And the cardio, running is one of the best things you can do for mental health.
Yeah.
So just cardio and strength is non-negotiable, I think.
And how about like speaking of traditional martial arts, like if you've seen the film Kickboxer, for example, where they string them up and just stretch them out. What are your thoughts like assisted or forced stretching? Is that good or bad?
Bad.
Why is it bad?
No, I wanted the silence to kind of resonate there. No, the forced stretching is unscientific. It's like the Russian army in the Second World War. The drafting is whoever survives is good to go. So if you have a unlimited number of applicants, you can just take the top 1% and let the 99% die. And then we see that one guy who could be like Van Damme, who were doing a full splits between two Volvo trucks going at 60 miles per hour backwards. That's the one case. that you find where it worked, but it's the survivor bias, and we have the exact same type of yoga teachers. People that are like, you have I just saw a video of Pilates, the original Pilates guy. He was taking the guy's head, shoving it down between his knees like he was trying to kill him. And that was how they did 50 years ago, but because there were a bunch of idiots. And there's no two ways to go about it. And traditional martial arts is the same. They just had no idea what they were doing. And we just praised them like gurus, but they were basically absolute clueless, ignorant idiots, most of them. And yeah, that's empirical fact.
Yeah, no, because I know when I've done more so with striking martial arts, but like I did some traditional martial arts as a kid, but sort of more recently like Muay Thai. So, you know, I've sort of sat in a butterfly stretch with someone standing on my thighs, or you sit with your kind of legs open and someone sits with their feet inside pulling the arms, those sort of stretches, or the up against the wall with a leg on the shoulder with someone sort of assisted stretching. So maybe not to the extremes of stringing someone up.
It's not assisted stretching. It's sadistic.
Okay.
It's not how the nervous system works. You can't. It's like taking a dog's ass and then just shoving it down in the ground. I said, sit, motherfucker. Like, that's not how you teach a dog to sit. It's like beating your kids. Like, that's how you're treating your body. It's wrong. Nothing else.
So how about it's P&F stretching? I forget the definition. So where maybe again not forcing, but where you'd resist maybe some muscular activation, and then when they relax, then you use that relaxation to get a deeper stretch. How about that type of thing?
I tried all of it, and none of it sticks because I found something better. You can get all those things that you want. All that you want, you can get it by doing the stuff that we designed, because it incorporates all of it. For example, if you can use gravity assisted stretching. If you're sitting if you're laying on your back and stretching your legs kind of like this, that's the same position as if you're standing up in a straddle and leaning forward. But this one is gravity assisted, right? And then you can use weights on top of that, and you can try to lift a weight from the bottom, and now it's weight assisted. Those are all three fine, but depending on how much intensity you want, you can change it. And when you start doing stuff like instead of just doing this and doing PNF and pushing the heel into the ground and then releasing, like it's much nicer to do a dynamic stretch where you're moving in and out of the pose and then coming up, balancing on your leg, and then doing a little bit of a handstand, and actually do an active yoga class feels so much better, and you get all those benefits that you're mentioning. Like foam rolling is going to give you one benefit, but doing a full yoga class is going to give you 250 benefits. So I'm not saying that they're wrong. They're just, the scope is limited to how much benefit it has.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And just thinking about a jiu-jitsu class. So you do a lot of teaching, I think, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So obviously a lot of instructors will do different things, and there's a lot of opinions around what a jiu-jitsu warm-up should look like. What do you typically do with your students, and what do you think the best approach to jiu-jitsu and warming up looks like?
I want to just really quickly just go the background story. I thought that the most important thing for jiu-jitsu is our body. I still believe that, and if you can move your body and your body is strong and mobile, you can do jiu-jitsu. But then there is another factor, and that is the teacher and the design of a jiu-jitsu class, like how the class is taught and how it's designed, leaves a lot to be desired. So I think jiu-jitsu can be a good business. If you want to live from jiu-jitsu and have a gym and be a teacher, it can be really worthwhile, because you're every class you're changing people's lives for the better if you do it well. But if you want to make money from jiu-jitsu, you have to know how to teach beginners so that they enjoy it, because the drop-off rate is somewhere between 70 and 95% in the first year, right? Almost all people quit before blue belt. That's really bad business. The churn rate is really high. So you need a strategy for getting people good enough in jiu-jitsu that they feel that they get what they're paying for, and that you can't injure them, and they can't even be afraid of getting injured. So like teaching jiu-jitsu has to feel and be structured and planned in a good way. And basically the best structure that we have in Jiu-Jitsu is Gracie Baja. And I say that with a oof, because when you see the Gracie Baja warm up and their structure, it leaves a lot to be it's not great, but it's the best we have, because most jiu-jitsu classes are just random. Like today, I feel like maybe we will see, and maybe it's connected to what we did last week in best case. So I think that a great jiu-jitsu class should have a purpose. It should be much less teaching, much more doing, much more personal follow-up, so that the instructor shows you for a couple of minutes, okay, this and this is what we're doing, go out and practice, and then I actually walk around and help people all the time instead of just standing around and observing. And I think that the technique, if we're doing a hip bump sweep, I think that if you're doing a hip bump sweep for the first time today, when you do it on a partner, should not be the first time you have done the movement. So I think that we need to have done at least 20, 30 of that movement in the warm-up. And the warm-up should be progressively going towards the stuff that we're going to do. For example, an inversion. You can't expect people to do a berimbolo or a guard retention inversion the first time when they're doing the technique or in sparring. The first 10, 15, 20 minutes of the class should be leading up to the technique, so that your muscle memory and your body is primed and prepared to do that movement. Tell me how many classes you've been to where you felt like the whole class had purpose from beginning to end.
Yeah, a few. To be fair, we've been fortunate. We've had some good instructors. So,
oh, good. Well. That's not the standard. Like I've been training jiu-jitsu and judo for 33 years, and almost never have we done a warm-up that was relevant to the technique. It's more like we do some warm-up for 5-10 minutes, and then we do technique, and then we do sparring, and like there's very little consistency through the whole thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess now you've kind of put it like that. Yeah. Probably not as many as I'd like, in fairness. Yeah.
Yeah. So the warm-up should do two things. It should warm up your whole body, and especially your joints, because it's not your muscles that get smashed by jiu-jitsu, it's your joints. So you can do full body movement in whole range of motion, and then it should also prepare you for the specific thing that we're going to practice. And the practice of the technique should focus on the movement, not on the grips. Like the grips is always the last thing that makes the technique work against a resisting opponent. You always make sure that you have the angle correct, you have the weight distribution correct, and you move your body in a strong way, so that you're not risking, like a knee cut should never hurt the knee. If you're hurting the knee in a knee cut, you are doing it against your body instead of with your body. So those things should be in place first. And then the grips, like we always nitpick about the grips. But that's not important. You need to put your body in the right position first, and then the grips can be like the details. Those details come last, and the warm up is like the most important part of jiu-jitsu class, especially for beginners, because you like if you make people feel great during the warm up and feel like they're getting the warm up, it doesn't really matter if they don't get the technique. And the technique is going to work so much better if their muscle memory has already done the movement several times and you've broken it down into 4 or 5 different steps. And then you don't have to spend 15 minutes explaining the technique. It doesn't matter how much you're explaining it. They can't understand it with their prefrontal cortex. Their body needs to understand it. And then they can learn the technique the next class. And like looking back, oh, that's what we did last class. Yeah, I don't know why I can do this, but I guess I'm talented. I'm going to continue doing this. That's how you make money from jiu-jitsu, and that's how you make people not injured and feel like they're progressing fast.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. That was a great answer. And with that, I mean, would you see, like, again, just looking at a lot of warm-ups, I don't know, you might see like a pulse raise. So you might see people having a little jog around, sort of maybe sidestepping, maybe sort of, touching the floor, standing back up, that sort of thing. And then you might see a little bit of activation and then some specific movement, through the mobility and stuff. Is that typically what you would do to incorporate the movements, or is there no running? Is it literally just movement based? And obviously as you say, very specific to what you're going to then be teaching?
I think a caveat here is if you live in a really cold climate, then it's probably nice to run for a couple of minutes just to get the heat up. Yeah. But that's basically the only thing that running does. Like if you do soccer, it makes sense to run for a warm up. If you're gonna lay down on the floor, running is not the first choice for warm ups. If you run around the mat for 30 seconds, you didn't waste too much time, but you didn't gain much from it.
Yeah.
The body has wrists, elbows, shoulders, neck, spine, hips, knees, and ankles, and all of those need at least a couple of minutes to be properly warmed up. So that's your whole warm up. That's 10, 15 minutes of warm up just for the joints. And I definitely think you can add a little bit of sprints and stuff into warm-ups. Like sprinting is good, and cardio and push-ups and pull-ups, not pull-ups, but sit-ups and stuff. Why not? Physical exercise is always good. But doing sit-ups and push-ups is not going to protect your neck from getting a hernia when you do sparring. So I think safety first should be the warm-up, and the body needs to be prepared for anything and everything that can happen in sparring. And you don't do that in 5 minutes. You need 15 minutes, and it's a tough lesson to sell. Most people don't want to hear it, especially the traditional jiu-jitsu academies who love their military warm-up and doing jumping jacks and everybody counting 1, 2, 3. I hate it with every fiber of my body. I hate it so much because it's a waste of time.
How do you feel about flow rolling for a warm-up?
Great for purple, brown belts and above. Not great for white and blue belts.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. Yeah, we do during the day. We do a lot of like flow rolling for a warm up, and yeah, it's exactly that. You see the couple of white belts that start
going at it.
I'm like, boys, relax. It's a flow roll.
Well, I believe in restricted sparring. So blindfolded, holding tennis balls, having gloves, having your hands tied to your belt. You can do flow rolling if it's handicapped, but allowing people to submit and take grips is basically it kills the flow roll, because you go back into feral mode or habits. So I love the best version of jiu-jitsu that I know is chess jiu-jitsu, which turn-based. I do one move, you do one move. So we take away all the speed and all the reaction, and it's just thinking. And you still have all the pressure and all the power and all the resistance, but you don't have the speed. And that's an absolutely great warm-up. And even if you have the knee injury, you're never going to be surprised. Nobody can ever surprise you and jump you. So you can do that even if you're just had a surgery. So I love the kind of mods to jiu-jitsu, if you will. But just doing push-ups and running in circles, doing technique, and then sparring is outdated class design that I don't subscribe to it.
And how about your cool down? Do you do end of class stretching and breath work or anything, or do you make that a homework assignment?
I always do it in my own classes, and people really enjoy it, especially the recovery that we do with the wall, where the wall helps you stretch. You just legs up the wall is probably the best back homework I can give anybody. Just lay down with your butt to the wall, legs up, stay there for 10 minutes, and your back is going to feel so much better. Gravity does all the work for you, and the wall keeps your legs in place. So I think recovery, we're actually shooting a recovery teacher training. So the big trend now in 2025, I don't know if you saw the gym that Fionn Davis is opening in London.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Did you see? Yeah, it's big, but did you see what the main focus is? The main focus is the kind of the spa and the ice bath and the saunas and everything
around
health
and recovery, wasn't it?
Yes, and this is the new trend, because people need to go to a class to goddamn relax. People don't have time to relax. So people need to go to the fitness center in order to recover and relax. So that's going to be a huge trend, because if you're too tired, everyone is exhausted and overwhelmed from work and responsibilities and training and overdoing it. So recovery classes are going to be a huge thing, and we need instructors for that. And like the non-sleep deep rest, like the yoga nidra, where you're doing breath work and kind of sleeping without sleeping, and active recovery, mobility and deep stretching, like yin yoga and stuff. when you combine all that into one class, like a 60-minute class of recovery, you're gonna feel like a superhero after. And if you combine that with a little bit of sauna and ice bath or whatever you like, you're gonna, like, if you do that Friday evening, your weekend is gonna feel very different compared to if you go out and have a tequila shot or a couple of beers. So when people experience that, they're gonna absolutely love it.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. And I feel like there's, I don't know if it's a bad cultural thing within jiu-jitsu, but it's something that I've tried reintroducing to some of the classes that I teach, which is stretching at the end. And, you can kind of see how little the guys do. I went to Alan Pozo, who I think you may have met previously.
Oh, yeah.
He did mention you beat him up when you were a purple belt.
Yeah, I love Alan. Yeah.
Yeah. So I went to a seminar of his, and he did stretching at the end, and it was really nice. But that was the first time that I'd done stretching at the end of a class.
Yeah.
For years, man. Do you think like instructors need to be a bit more proactive with stretching with their students?
I think that the people that we have to differentiate the jiu-jitsu people into addicts and non-addicts. Us three, we're addicts, and we can't extrapolate our preferences on everybody. We can't project our addiction onto everybody. I think 80 to 90% of people are hobbyists, and they do jiu-jitsu because they enjoy it. And as soon as they don't enjoy it, they're gonna stop. We can have 6 knee surgeries, and we're like, oh, I think I can come back now and start sparring again. Like, that's addictive behavior. So I think that we can't just assume that everybody wants to do 10 hard rounds. I think if we have a 90-minute class, we can do 45 minutes of warm-up and technique, and then we do like 35, 40 minutes of sparring. And the people that don't want to spar so much, they can do like 3 rounds and rest for 3. And the other people can do 6 full rounds if they want. But then the last 10 minutes, 15 minutes, we can, like, I have a guy, he's been teaching wrestling and jiu-jitsu his whole life. And he loves to do the technique by the end. So that we go through everything that happened in sparring and we talk about it, and that while we're stretching. So he's doing the recovery and cool down while he's doing the talking, because after people have got the steam out and did all the sparring, they're ready to listen, and they're in the right modus. I love that much more than doing the technique before sparring. So we do warm up and sparring, and then we talk about it while we're stretching. I think that's a much better class design.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that sounds great. In fairness, like, that's a good amount of everything, and then you're leaving that class feeling like you've got a little bit of everything as well, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. And the people that are not so great at jiu-jitsu, they're new. Maybe they trained for less than 2 years. They're gonna, like, if you sandwich the class with a nice warm up and a nice stretching, they're not gonna remember what happened in the middle. So you can kind of, like the IKEA, you have the ice cream and the hot dog store at the end. So that even all the shit you went through when you went to IKEA, they actually call it the makeup for part of IKEA, where, like, whatever shit happened, they forget it when they get an ice cream. I think if you have a 5-minute stretching by the end, you can get away with a shitty class and lots of pain from the sparring.
Yeah, I agree.
Years ago, I saw Eddie Bravo. You've probably seen it. I think it's quite a famous clip, but he was talking about mobility and his giving black belts. And I think he said that if somebody couldn't get their knees to the floor in the butterfly stretch, he wouldn't consider them for a black belt because it means they can't do half the moves. Is that something that you consider when grading someone's mobility?
Really funny that you brought that up. I've used it many times. I don't know if you heard me talk about it in the videos, but I remember that clip and I'm like, oh, that makes sense. And then when I learned about human anatomy, science-based human anatomy, I'm like, I don't think Eddie Bravo would be my first go-to to listen to about human anatomy. I don't think he studied that too much. Some people will do it with ease. Some people will have a hard time doing it. I definitely think that people can be much more flexible than they think. But setting a hard limit, like everybody should be able to get the toes to their nose in the lasso, is overgeneralization, I would say. Eddie Bravo, like he's an expert, and experts have expert bias. And when you have expert bias, you lose connection to reality. So I wouldn't listen to like what a jiu-jitsu guy has to say about anatomy. I would listen to an anatomy guy. because they're trained to talk about those things. I heard a quote today that I wish I heard earlier, and is the one without having done the one who has not researched the problem is not entitled to have an opinion about it. And I don't think Eddie Bravo is entitled to an opinion about it because he didn't do any research on hip mobility.
Okay, yeah. Expert bias, I like that. It's good.
I was just thinking that's really good. That's a really good term, isn't it? Because there's so many. You think of even jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
When a really good practitioner of jiu-jitsu talks about jiu-jitsu, they always coming from a view of like everyone else is at times shit, or everyone else is at times not as good, or how can they not do this move or this movement? And then sometimes you can be that far ahead that you forget what it was like when you first walked in the gym.
You're right. Yeah, expert bias is basically stacked assumptions on top of assumptions, and that's why, like, I want to plug one thing that I talked about teaching jiu-jitsu, and I believe the best jiu-jitsu teacher for beginners, not for everybody, but for beginners, is blue belts. Like if you take a blue belt that is good at teaching, they're gonna teach a much better beginner's class than a black belt, because the black belt has that bias and have so many assumptions, and they're so sick of saying the same thing a million times, and they're so frustrated that the students can't even understand what the right and left hand is. The blue belt just went through the journey. They have all the relatable stories still fresh in their mind, and they're really motivated to help because they're still excited about jiu-jitsu. The black belt that is, they can't remember being a beginner. They're like, most of them couldn't bother. Some black belts are great teachers, but most black belts should not teach beginners. They should teach the advanced students. So giving the beginner's class, the introduction class, the introduction course should be given to blue and purple belts. I don't care what the Gracie University or anybody says that, only black belts should teach jiu-jitsu. Absolutely not. Because people don't need jiu-jitsu when they start jiu-jitsu. They need to move, they need self-confidence, they need fitness, they want to look hot, they want to lose weight. These things are more important than half guard. So when you have the first 10 classes, you should never mention a jiu-jitsu name. You should never say, this is closed guard, this is this is that. You should just have them do jiu-jitsu without them knowing. It's just like double underhook sparring. Like, okay, try to get your arms under the other person's arms and lift them up. Go. You're teaching them a lot of jiu-jitsu, but you are not explaining it. The game is, or the drill is explaining it to them by doing it. And we created a course on teachgrappling.com, how to structure an introduction course and a blue belt curriculum that is not based on gi or no gi or techniques. It's not based on specific techniques. I use a specific technique as an example, like a hip bump sweep. But if I want to connect two blurbs, like closed guard and mount, you do that with a sweep. You can do that with a flower sweep, or you can do it with a hip bump sweep. Which one you should choose is up to you. So use any technique as long as you can have beginners connect the basic positions. The basic positions being mount, back mount, side control, turtle, half guard, open guard, butterfly, and the closed guard. 8 techniques, 8 positions. Connect them together into a network, and then you're a blue belt. Add a couple of submissions and add a couple of takedowns, and you're a blue belt. So like I believe that I created based with hundreds of interactions with people around the world, because everybody agree about these things, but they don't prioritize them. They do things like De La Riva and Spider Guard in beginners classes, which is not good, because if you don't understand closed guard, you're not going to understand Spider Guard. So start with closed guard and open guard instead of De La Riva and reverse De La Riva and X guard. Those things come later. If you start with X guard and you don't know butterfly, you don't have a way of getting into X guard. So those things are automatically pushed further down the line. And all these things, like the most basic thing is, if you want to teach someone a takedown, what should you teach them first? Tell me. Break fall training.
Okay, yeah.
Why? Yeah. You say yeah, but it should be automatic.
I know. I'm saying that because I agree. It's something that's really not taught in jiu-jitsu at all. You see it in judo, but jiu-jitsu is terrible for it. I agree.
So why would you have so many guard pullers in jiu-jitsu? Because they don't want to get thrown.
Yeah. Because
they don't have break fall training. We have to start with. I'm not saying anybody's doing it wrong. I'm just saying people are doing it in the wrong order. We need to know what to prioritize at the very first class. What do we teach people the first class? And what it means to be a blue belt should be pretty universal. What it means to be a brown and black belt, or if it's no-gi, like what it means to be in an advanced class, doesn't really matter. But the first year of jiu-jitsu is super important, and how the class is designed and how the curriculum is designed is super important. And the only way to discuss this is in a training. So I think we need to have official teacher trainings for beginners, and that's what I try to create. So if anyone is interested, go to teachgrappling.com and read about it, and send me a message and sign up. And if you're a gym owner, I even give you a massive discount, because gym owners are so important. And most gym owners, they're busy guys, and they don't want to teach all the classes themselves if they have more than 100 members. They need a purple belt to start teaching the classes, right? The beginners classes. And how are they going to make sure that purple belt teaches a good class? It's difficult. It's difficult to know. But if you send that purple belt to me, and Sebastian tells you 100 things you should do and 100 things you shouldn't do, how to teach a good class, and just stick to a script that makes it easy to teach and it's easy to learn, that's good. And I don't believe that Gracie Diversity is doing a good job of representing the whole jiu-jitsu community. They're great salesmen, and they have a lot of good things, but they also like huge expert bias. That like they're so experts that they're completely unrelatable. So I'm trying to dumb it down to a level where it's easy for everybody to understand, and that's my plug for today. Teachgrappling.com to become a blue belt or purple belt beginner's teacher.
Yeah, no, I like that. I remember when I first started, I went to New York and I trained at Henzo's. And so I was really surprised that he took us, like when I was a white belt, he took us into a separate room, and then a purple belt taught the class with just a room full of white belts. But at the time, I really enjoyed that, because I knew then where I was against other white belts, and when we was practicing techniques and we were doing stuff. And at the time, I was like, oh, why is a purple belt teaching it? It was the first time I'd been taught by a purple belt. But in fairness, he was like super enthusiastic, such a nice guy. And the basic sweep that we'd done on the day was like fantastic. So like just from that one class is still pretty much one of my favorite escapes that I still use, because it's like a really basic escape, but it works so well. It's just a really good way to get an underhook, and I still remember it now. But at the time, I loved it because I was a white belt, and went in the class and I was like, I'm at Henzo, see what the other white belts like, and then I was like rolling with everyone. I was doing like really well at the time, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. Instead of getting my ass handed to me, like in a normal class where you're getting like, you get a big purple belt and he's just beating the fucking shit out of you. This year was like really fun because it was just white belts, and then in the room there was no one that good. So like you always, practicing the technique. And then when we was rolling, even we were just kind of like, chilling, and it wasn't as bad. We were absolutely just spazzing it up. But at the same time, it was nice to just not get absolutely smashed and feel like I could work on some stuff.
Yes, so I think that no specific attitude or concept or strategy is better than the other, but I think those two complement each other. It's nice to be in an all levels class where you can roll with black belts when you're a white belt, and it's also nice to have like a walled garden where you can feel like you can not get your ass handed to you and kind of practice. But the caveat is that white belts can be really dangerous. So I heard a guy, a good friend in Norway, he stopped doing sparring in his beginners classes, and his retention rate shot up by 400%.
Interesting.
Yeah, I can imagine it. Like even now when you roll with someone who's pretty new or whatever, you've got to be so careful, because it's just their reactions are just, everything's stiff. If they grab an arm, they're trying to rip it off. They're not even, and it's more just about it's not about that they mean it. It's just they're just excited. They're just like, I've got an arm. I finally got his arm. I finally got this. And they try and rip it off because they want that tap. I remember what it was like. I remember what it was like getting your first tap or submission and how you felt. You was like, God, I actually submitted someone today. But I probably used terrible technique, and I just probably squeeze someone's head.
It's a trade-off. You have to give people what they want, but not so soon that it's dangerous. Someone explained submissions like a drug. Like you can't just give someone a lot of drugs. Like you give them a little bit and then the next day a little bit more. So people need to work on their fundamentals, and then sometimes you teach them submissions. But like teaching a brand new beginner an armbar and then throwing them into sparring is irresponsible. And other sports like wrestling and judo, in some countries you actually need a university degree in order to teach children martial arts. Because there are so many things that need to be in place. Bad mistakes that you can do, like breaking someone's neck and they're paralyzed or dead, is something that can happen. And it doesn't happen if you have the training and understanding. So I believe that the way to upgrade jiu-jitsu, my goal is to help jiu-jitsu grow to the next level and just have more people doing it. And I think the way to do that is not to raise the level of ADCC or it's called CGI now, right? To raise the bar for the best techniques. I think that's irrelevant for most people. We need to lower the bar so that it's we're creating a McDojo without losing the actual spirit of jiu-jitsu. We need to make jiu-jitsu commercialized by making it more clean and, a household thing. And we're not doing that by having Fight Club. The first rule about Fight Club is that you don't talk about Fight Club. That's really bad marketing. We can still smash each other and kill each other, but that happens at 10 a.m. in the competition class. We don't put that in our marketing. We make jiu-jitsu a sport for nerdy people with glasses like me that, are not big, hulky, strong, tattooed guys. We make jiu-jitsu for everyone and their girlfriends and their mother-in-law. That's how we make jiu-jitsu grow. And the only way to do that is by lowering the bar and making it very safe and clear for the first year and two. And then whoever is addicted enough to continue, we can introduce it gradually. But we don't throw beginners into wild sparring. It's irresponsible and stupid and bad business.
Yeah, I agree, mate. Yeah. It's great advice, in all honesty. It's great advice. It's just, I always think like we do need some more... like it needs to be more structured as a whole sport. I genuinely think that, I think it needs more direction. And I think we all need to get more on the same page with how we structure everything, because you're right. You probably lose so many white belts because they hate each other before they've even really experienced what jiu-jitsu really is. Yeah.
Mate, I've got a colleague who would really benefit from jiu-jitsu, just like for his mental health. And we've talked about jiu-jitsu before. And he said, mate, I've tried it. I got really injured. I'll never do it again. So he's like a prime example. He's gone and give it some welly and hurt himself.
Hurt himself, yeah. Sure.
Yeah, if someone has knee problems and you're like, hey, you should start jiu-jitsu, you're not doing them a favor.
No.
No, yeah. So if you run a gym or if you want to teach jiu-jitsu, please reach out to me. Let's make it work, because I want to kind of set the low standard, like just having a standard for what it means to teach a beginner's class. Like it would be a huge honor for me if I could help people just have some structure at all. I have one girl, Amy, in the UK. She started an academy. She's a purple belt, and she started like a super small academy where she lives. There's no jiu-jitsu there. And she had 8 people sign up to beginner's class, and she took my course and followed the system, and all 8 of them signed up to the membership after. She had 100% retention rate, and that makes me really happy, because those people are like, thanks to her structure, it was easy for her to teach and easy for people to like jiu-jitsu, and that's what we want: more money for us and more happiness.
Yeah, love that, mate. And keep fighting that fight, because I think that's what we need. It's awesome, mate. We'll let you go in a second. I've enjoyed that. It's been awesome. Obviously, you've got a bit of a super fight coming up in the UK soon. So tell us real quick about who the opponent is, how you're feeling about it, and how the prep's going.
I am so happy to be an old motherfucker in Master 3 and still be invited to super fights. And tournaments are hard for me because of the rule set. I usually have like a kind of sloppy, open, loose style, and I get 1 advantage or 2 points scored against me, and I take a lot of risks. And usually the person is either they're always stronger, and they usually are more tactical than me, so they win with points, or I do a mistake and I get submitted. But where I really enjoy being is like it's a one fight, it's no points, and it's a show. That's what I like most. So I'm really happy to be invited and put on a nice scramble in front of everybody.
Yeah, it looks like a really good show. It's Endured, isn't it?
Endured in the 8th of March. So follow them on Instagram and buy tickets. It's going to be a really nice fight night.
Fortnite.
Yeah, we're hoping to be down there, mate. So any luck, we'll get to meet you in person and say hello. So that'd be cool.
Very nice, very nice. And thank you guys for having me. And please join the February challenge, the 12-week challenge.
Yeah, we'll get the link from you, my friend, and we'll get it in the description as well. But I'm definitely in, 100%. So yeah, thanks. Look forward to it.
Amazing.
Thank you, buddy.